This administration is I'm going to say even abused the transfers out. When we left the legislature, we had safeguards. We had ways of stopping things and taking a look and seeing exactly where the government was at. I continue to hear them, we'll run state government like a business. You don't run a business this way. When you have constant crisis, constant turmoil, you're going to lose your A players.
All good work is done in defiance of management.
I'm going to tell you the truth whether you like it or not.
Go ahead, give me the finger.
The Dan Parsons Show.
Hey, welcome to the hottest political podcast in Nebraska. I'm your host, Dan Parsons. Hey, today we're diving deep into the math and the myths surrounding Nebraska's fiscal future. Joining us is a guest who has spent years at the helm of the state's checkbook, former State Senator John Stenner. As the former chair of the Legislature's Appropriations Committee, Senator Stenner navigated Nebraska through the historic economic shifts of the 2020 pandemic. And today, he joins us to challenge the narrative of a budget crisis, arguing that the state's $472 million deficit isn't a revenue problem, but a result of hidden spending and disappearing guardrails. My interview with former Nebraska State Senator John Stenner starts right now. Well, it is my pleasure to welcome to the show former Nebraska State Senator John Stenner. Senator, welcome to the Dan Parsons Show.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you could join us. I've been wanting to do this. Well, let me give our audience a little background. Senator Stenner represented District 48 in the Nebraska Legislature from 2014 to 2022, including several terms as chair of the Appropriations Committee. And I'll just remind our audience that District 48 is located in and around Scottsbluff and Gering, our friends in western Nebraska. Here's some background about John's education. He's a two-time graduate of our beloved University of Nebraska, a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in economics. He's past chairman of the Nebraska Bankers Association, and I found this little tidbit, John, was a member of the 1970 and 1971 National Championship football teams. So I did not know that about you, John. So
it was a long time ago.
Well, I use that story, and I won't bore you with it, but because of your championship football team in 1970 and 71, that's what got me interested in reading the newspaper as a 10-year-old kid and, following Nebraska football. And then I started looking at what was on the front page of the paper. So
very good.
Anyway, well, John, I wanted to chat with you today because you recently wrote an op-ed for the Nebraska Examiner. And if our audience hasn't seen that yet, I encourage them to go check that out. But you said in that Examiner op-ed that Nebraska is not in a budget crisis. What did you mean by that?
There were several factors that compelled me to even sit down and write something. The first one is I wanted to write something to demystify the budget, because many times, you mention budgets, everybody goes, whoa, that's for somebody else. Well, I tried to demystify it as best as I could, but I'm also very frustrated with this current administration and, a continual budget crisis that they continue to have. And I know this session, even though we have a budget in place and they do not have to balance the budget, they are going to work on some of those balancing ideas. So really what I wanted to demonstrate is when you appropriate money, that covers your agencies, that covers the operations for the state government. That revenue then comes in, and I believe if my numbers serve me right, I'm just going to make sure I got this right. over the biennium, it's 13.75 million, and they're going to spend to run the government $11 billion. So you do the net, you do the math, there's plenty of money left over. However, this administration is over, I'm going to say even abused the transfers out. And those transfers out are expenditures. They come out of your checking account, as I said in the article, and they're placed in a savings account. But immediately those savings accounts, the money is spent on mostly property tax relief. With the cuts that have been already put in place with income tax cuts and the amount of money that they're allocating for property tax relief, and I think the governor's asking for another 170 million, that creates a heck of a hole. And I don't know if that's all possible. You should have, as I talked to many people, 1107 was one of the bills that I was heavily involved in. And 1107 had to do with property tax and allocating money out of the general fund for property tax relief. Now, what we tried to do in that is what I put into the budget was there was a 3% number that we decided needed to be in place to run the government, which is the appropriation side of it, if you will. And that was kind of where I thought inflation would settle out, 2.5% to 3.5%, 3%. But over and above that, then half of it would go into the rainy day fund and half then would go for property tax relief. We also had gambling money coming in. So there was about $1 billion when we left the legislature in true property tax relief at that time. But we had safeguards. We had ways of stopping things and taking a look and seeing exactly where the government was at. The other thing that I passed was, what is a fully funded reserve? There was a lot of questions about that. That's 16% of total revenue. Fully funded reserve. That means sometimes you're going to be below it, sometimes you're going to be above it. But at least we decided upon 2 months of operating as a fully funded reserve. So those are things I didn't necessarily put in the article. The other thing that I'm looking at that the governor continues to pull down, and less than 1% is what he says we've appropriated. Well, yeah, less than 1% might be right for the agencies, and that's the operations of the government. But if you got a 2.5% or 3.5% inflation, obviously, then you are actually cutting those agencies short. And I think in this current recommendation, he's got 0 put in out there. That, in fact, is a cut to those agencies. And I think he's used vacancies.
And it has, I'm sorry to interrupt, but it has an impact not only for the economy and the state agencies, but I suspect it plays on morale of those employees as well.
There's no question about that. And I continue to hear him, run state government like a business. You don't run a business this way, simply because your A players are the ones that leave first. And when you have constant crisis, constant turmoil, no salary increases, no contemplated increase in healthcare costs, you're gonna lose your A players. And obviously, they're also contemplated is we're not going to fill those vacancies. Well, those vacancies are there for a reason. That agency decided that's the number of people that we need in order to carry out our statutory obligations. And you need to sit down and really, as an appropriator, decide what that level has to be. So
and some of those agencies, Senator, are responsible for bringing new business into our state. Economic development, for example, that's what we need now. It seems like to me more than ever.
Yeah, Dan, there's no question that has really suffered under this administration. And actually, if you go back to the big bill that we did pass that took the place of the current bill, we actually had safeguards in that as well. But we contemplated that being stepped up over a period of time. And it was a very, very good bill. It was a comprehensive bill. And that has been, bits and pieces have been taken out and continue to be taken out. But this taking cash funds, one-time money, and using that to bridge some kind of budgetary shortfall that you've created of your own volition, that doesn't work. I mean, you've got to be able to put a structural situation in tow that does not use one-time money. And I think in this case, I believe he's eliminating several cash funds, like 24 of them, I think is what I counted, and taking excess funds out once again to the tune of $311 million. That doesn't solve any problems. All it does is create problems with the agencies or those individual funds that were set up for a specific purpose. And a lot of them were set up many, many years ago, and have done really a good job of what they were set up to do.
What are some of the other ramifications? You mentioned the reductions across the board. Again, running the government like a business. I think it was this summer, as you mentioned, the governor indicated that he was asking all his code agencies for a 10% reduction across the board. Those type of just unilateral mandates really aren't very effective, I suspect, in the long run.
That's you're exactly correct. The one thing, when I took over as appropriation chair my first year, we ended up being at $1.2 billion short for the biennium. And we did use, depending on the area, we did use a fairly austere approach to it, 5% cuts here, 8.5% on higher ed, those types of things. But they were one-time cuts. And I felt like anybody can survive a 2-year period of time. If you continue on out, then you start to really cut to the bone and really start to negatively impact those organizations. And I see the University of Nebraska, even though he put a 2% growth or 2.5% growth rate in for TIOSA to be paid to those 44 schools, he turns around and almost leaves the university short at a time when they need it the worst. And We're trying to get back into the AAU, and, you're cutting them short. They're cutting programs now. What a travesty that is. That's your biggest economic generator for the state.
I think that's what gets lost a lot, Senator, is just how important the University of Nebraska is to our economy. And not only have there been, as you said, cuts in past years, it just seems to me the overall tenor of support for higher education, not only here in Nebraska, but it seems nationwide, is really suffering currently.
Yeah, and I have followed a few states. They had the cuts from the federal government, but a lot of states have stepped up and tried to fill that gap, especially on the research side of things. There's nothing better than research. I mean, it brings in the brainiacs that you need to have for your state. And we've got just a great president with President Gold. He's shown his ability to bring in the best and brightest and do that, work with the philanthropist community and the like of that. He is somebody that can take us to the next level. Let's give him the resources to get that done.
Well, and I think what befuddles a lot of people is, obviously Governor Pillen served as a regent for many years. So he should know that system and how best to take care of it. But, give us your thoughts on the Appropriations Committee and the tasks that they have at hand and, these upcoming budget hearings. Can you walk us through a little bit of what that process is like since you were there for so many years? And then I'll have a follow-up.
Well, I think what they're doing right now is working with the deficit requests. Those are requests from agencies that have fallen short of they need more money in order to continue to execute statutorily what they need to do. Those are called deficit requests. So then you sit down with the fiscal office, and there are people in the fiscal office assigned to those areas. So they kind of go through what that request is about. From the governor's recommendation, you go through his recommendations as well. Since this is the second year of the biennium, you then start to schedule some hearings. And I'm not sure exactly how he's going to schedule the budget hearing. A lot of times you have the head of the Office for Budget for the state of Nebraska to come in and present that budget recommendations. There's a lot of recommendations. There's a lot of moving parts in this. Oh my goodness, it's hard to even get through a lot of it. And I actually tried to tie some numbers out, and they're not tying out very well. So those would be things that I would definitely ask about, and then try to measure what the ending results are and what our priorities are. And you make the changes that you have to make. You eliminate those recommendations that you don't think are in the best interest of the state. And those are things you have to do as a legislature. They have to remember the legislature, it's their budget. It isn't the governor's budget. It's their budget. And so, as I said before, or several times, between myself and Governor Ricketts, we had a love-hate relationship. But,
Sure.
in most part, we agreed with him, but there are some differences. And we battled it out, and I think we left the state in pretty good shape.
Yes, you did. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I know that you rely on staff, with term limits, you're going to only be there 8 years and different administrations coming through. I know you rely on staff to help, have some continuity in the budget process. Anyway, your thoughts on term limits and the folks around the legislature who are seasoned professionals that help not only the legislative staff, but I assume the governor as well.
The staff is now moved away. When I first started, I had nine interviews for staff, and each one of them, I think the less was like 9 years of experience. I hired somebody that had 20, 30. Those folks are all predominantly gone. There's a few of them still around. So the staff experience is gone. And what happens many times is knowledge is power, and the executive side really has all the power right now because they have the staff, they have the long-term longevity of things. So that has impacted us. But just let's do some math. There was 18 people came in when I first started. In behind that, 19 people came in. So you do the math, 37 new people to the legislature, divide that by 49 positions.
Wow.
That's 70+% newbies. I had to take over after 2 years experience in appropriations. That is one big task to be able to ask somebody to do. But it wasn't just appropriation. It was education. It was judiciary. It was HHS. Some big committees with a lot of really, really difficult subject materials that you had to spend tons of time to get that institutional knowledge that you need to have to make the right decisions.
Yeah. Senator, you froze a little bit, a little hiccup in your, that's okay. I think we got most of it. Well, Senator, as we wrap up, what's your message to the governor and to your former colleagues in the legislature? How do we fix this problem, and what advice would you have for them?
Well, one of the fixes that you would have is the big, beautiful bill at the Fed side has created a lot of this deficit, at least this year, and it certainly carries over after that. Past legislatures, they just look over their shoulder, have always dealt with that through the Revenue Committee. The Revenue Committee would meet and make the appropriate adjustments to leave that as a revenue neutral. And that's one of the things I would recommend that they do. That solves a lot of the problems. The other thing is to take a hard look down the road and take a look at what indeed you are doing to these agencies. And my mantra was always do as less harm as you possibly can during this process. But even if and this is from Tom Berquist, said if they just stopped the cuts on income tax, which I think is about 4.33, That's 700 million. That kind of solves your problem. So you have to have the willpower to certainly try to get something that's sustainable in place, that long term you're able to fund the government at a level that will allow them to at least fulfill their statutory duties. The other thing is that you need to build that reserve back up. That reserve is a two-part reserve. First of all, it's for the economic shock absorber that you need to have. Yeah. But secondarily, we don't borrow in the state of Nebraska. Right. So a lot of our term prison spending, canal, whatever, comes out of that reserve. So building that back would be probably a priority. It's always been a priority with me. I always felt like having a healthy reserve was fiscally responsible.
A rainy day fund. That's something we all ought to be able to get around. Well, Senator Stenner, I appreciate your knowledge. I appreciate you taking time to chat with us, and we'll keep in touch, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Hey, that's all the time we have today. What a fascinating conversation. A big thank you to former State Senator John Stinner for diving into the numbers and sharing his valuable insights on Nebraska's budget outlook. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive interview. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'm Dan Parsons. Now go do good things.